This great TNG episode always makes me mad that Star Trek killed off Picard's family. Some Star Trek, The Next Generation episodes linger in the mind not because of their action, mystery, or technobabble, but because they reveal something deeply human about characters we thought we already understood. One such episode is Family, the quiet, contemplative story that directly follows the best of both worlds. It's a favorite among many Trek fans, but it also sparks a particular frustration, because every time I revisit it, I'm reminded of what Star Trek eventually did to Jean-Luc Picard's family, and I can't help but get a little angry. The loss of the Picards isn't just tragic. It retroactively undermines one of the richest and most meaningful chapters in TNG. Rewatching Family today feels like opening an emotional time capsule. We see Picard not as the stoic, unbreakable captain of the Enterprise, but as a man struggling to reclaim himself after being violated and used as a weapon by the Borg. And the heart of that healing process is his family. His brother Robert, his sister-in-law Marie, and his young nephew Rene. They are the grounding force that pulls him back from the abyss. Their connection is simple, quiet, and wonderfully human. Exactly the kind of storytelling Star Trek excels at when it slows down. But knowing what happens later makes those scenes infinitely harder to watch. Because after TNG gave Picard this beautifully rooted family life, Star Trek later chose to kill Robert and Renee in an off-screen fire, severing the emotional lifeline that Family had so meticulously built. It's a narrative choice that still stings, decades later, because it feels like the franchise robbed Picard and us of something irreplaceable. And every time Family rolls around, I feel that sting all over again. A rare look at Picard the man, not the captain. One of the reasons Family is so beloved is because it offers something almost revolutionary for the time. A Star Trek episode with no space battles, no new planets, no major sci-fi threat, just character work. An entire hour devoted to Picard's emotional recovery was unprecedented, especially in an age when serialized storytelling wasn't the norm. Patrick Stewart delivers some of his best work in all of Star Trek as a man haunted by the Borg's violation. But what makes the episode extraordinary is the contrast between Picard's internal turmoil and the everyday provincial calm of the Picard vineyard. It's here we meet Robert, gruff, stubborn, deeply traditional, and yet quietly protective of the brother he never fully understood. Their dynamic is the heart of the episode. Robert resents Jean-Luc's fame and idealism. Jean-Luc resents Robert's condescension. Yet beneath it all is an unspoken bond only Family can maintain. Their climactic mud-soaked fight, raw, cathartic, and brutally honest, breaks Picard open in a way no Starfleet counselor ever could. Robert's presence matters. He understands Jean-Luc in ways no one else does. He's the counterweight that grounds him, the living reminder of the Picard heritage Jean-Luc has always felt partially disconnected from. And Rene, the sweet, wide-eyed nephew who idolizes his adventurous uncle, represents hope. A future for the Picard legacy, even if Jean-Luc never has children of his own. It's profoundly touching, and it's why what happens later feels so wrong. Star Trek's decision to kill the Picards still feels unnecessary. When Star Trek Generations hit theaters, it delivered many emotional moments. Kirk's death, the destruction of the Enterprise D, and Picard's heartbreaking trauma after learning that Robert and Renee had both died in a fire. The intent was clear: to give Picard a deeply personal motivation for confronting mortality and the Nexus's illusions of a perfect family life. But emotionally resonant as the scene was, the long-term consequences were disastrous. Because by killing them off so abruptly, and off-screen, no less, the franchise effectively erased the emotional center that Family built so carefully. The Picard home, once a symbol of healing, stability, and heritage, became instead a reminder of tragedy and absence. Reen's golden future was extinguished. Robert's thorny, complicated dynamic with Jean-Luc was silenced forever. Worse, the choice feels oddly disproportionate. Generations needed Picard to be grieving. But did it really need that level of devastation? Was the emotional impact only possible by wiping out his entire family line? It's a narrative shortcut, an easy way to raise the stakes without considering what was being lost. Fans felt the blow. Picard's grief in Generations is powerful, but it's a borrowed moment, dependent on character work done in Family. And because the movie didn't take time to reconnect us with the Picard brothers before eliminating them, The tragedy feels more like a writer's convenience than an organic continuation of their story. It's not that Star Trek can't tackle heavy emotional topics. It thrives on them. It's that this one feels like a betrayal of everything family is set up so beautifully. How family becomes bittersweet after generations. Rewatching Family after knowing Robert and Reen's fate turns the episode into a bittersweet relic. Every interaction, every smile, every glimpse of hope becomes tinged with melancholy. When Renee excitedly speaks about exploring the stars when he's older, it's impossible not to feel that pang of loss. When Robert grudgingly admits pride in his brother, knowing it will be the last time they ever speak hits hard. Even the vineyard itself becomes almost sacred, a setting we know will be touched by tragedy. But what hurts most is how much of Picard's healing depended on a future that would never come. Family ends with the promise that Picard, scarred but recovering, has reconnected with his roots. He's reminded of who he is outside the uniform. He's reminded that he's not alone, that he has people who will always be there for him. Generations takes that sense of grounding and burns it away. It transforms Family into a portrait of something fleeting and fragile, something that Star Trek later abandoned. And while we can appreciate the beauty of the episode on its own, the knowledge of what comes after creates a sense of narrative whipple. Picard's family didn't need to be sacrificed to make him compelling. One argument sometimes made in defense of killing off Robert and Renee is that it adds dimension to Picard's character. And yes, Picard's grief becomes a recurring part of his emotional landscape. We see it shape his choices, especially in Star Trek. Picard, where the vineyard and legacy of the Picard family again take center stage. But grief is not the only path to death. Star Trek had an opportunity to explore the evolution of Picard's relationship with his family as he aged, especially as he reconnected with Earth in his retirement. Imagine episodes where Robert and Jean-Luc mend their old differences further, or where Renee, now a Starfleet cadet or a young astrophysicist, seeks his uncle's guidance. These stories would have expanded Picard's world in a way that felt hopeful and grounded rather than tragic. Star Trek is often at its best when it balances optimism with realism. Killing the Picards tipped the scales too far toward tragedy, and it didn't need to. Why the loss still matters today. Part of why the decision still frustrates fans is because of how essential the vineyard and the Picard heritage became to Jean-Luc's identity in later stories. Star Trek. Picard returned repeatedly to the family estate, portraying it as the emotional core of Jean-Luc's memories and regrets. But those memories are haunted by loss. The ghost of what might have been hangs over Picard constantly. And that's why Family remains such a powerful and painful episode. It's a reminder of everything Picard once had, and everything the franchise later chose to take away. The story of Robert and Reen's deaths didn't enrich Family. It dimmed it. It turned a warm, humanistic episode about reconciliation into the